You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side.
God bless America. Welcome to The Ranch, everybody. Podcast where we explore the people and happenings of Dry Creek Ranch, Eagle, and the greater Boise area. Quick note, please do not forget September 14th. That is the meeting with the county where the charter school will present some information and potentially help decide the future of the plot of land in DCR that is slotted for the school. So again, September 14th, if you want to learn more information about it, please go out and check it out. My guests today are two pretty awesome people. They're involved with Courageous Survival, a nonprofit organization that helps servicemen, active and retired, first responders, their families, and all people connected with them to help promote mental health and help individuals manage the trauma and life experiences they've had. They are both extremely familiar with this in their personal lives and came to talk to me about the organization and how much it benefits individuals. There is an event on September 10th that we do talk about, so if you have somebody who you think might benefit from something like this, please do share this information with them. But without further ado, the two people, man, woman, the myth, the legends, Jacki Briggs and Cary Salazar.
Well,
thank you for coming, you two. I appreciate it.
thank you for the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So how did Chris Gibbons get connected with you? Because he's the one who introduced me to you, and then obviously you brought Cary, which is awesome. So what's his connection?
Yeah, Chris and Pam Gibbons, they are retired law enforcement. Well, Chris is, and his wife. We met them through Code 3-1 Retired Law Enforcement Association.
Is that like interstate?
It's an Idaho organization that started here in Idaho. A lot of officers are moving here from other parts of the country, and they wanted to do something to really build that connection, keep that fraternal order, just that camaraderie and stuff. And the reason that they got involved with us, this was pre-Chris and Pam, was they came to us almost 2 years ago and said, hey, will you help us? We want to create some kind of peer support teams for our retired law enforcement officers and their spouses, because once they retire, they have nothing. And then, excuse me, so they came to us and we said, yeah, we would love to help you. And then they came back and said, well, why don't we help set it up and volunteer for you guys? And that opened it up so that we have not just retired law enforcement, but we've got active duty and retired first responders and all demographics, from dispatch to fire to law enforcement. And then we've got military and veterans, and then spouses or significant other peer support teams.
Gotcha. So you guys do you span the whole gamut.
We do. We cover a lot. And, a couple of people have asked us, well, what about sometimes veterans have an issue with specifically law enforcement? And our answer to that is that the peer support teams are separate. So if we've got a veteran who would rather, talk to a combat veteran or another veteran, we offer them that opportunity. Even, and honestly, there's a lot of first responders that are probably about a third are veterans already. They make that crossover when they come out of active duty service to going into first responder service. And so it's really we've seen a great demographic come together and a lot of really great support.
One of the beautiful things about this state in particular that I've noticed since I moved here is really that you don't have the hesitation to tell people that you were involved in, either service or in law enforcement or something like that. Because back in California, again, where I was moving from, it's almost like an offensive thing in certain areas. So like my wife and I both went to UC Berkeley. Okay. Well, I was not, so I just went to the best college I could get into. That was my jam. I'm like, look, if I get in here, I'm going to go here. So I go there, and Berkeley, thank God, turned me far more conservative than I was in the first place, just because you kind of see this push to this idea, this experiment pushed out far enough, and you're like, all right, that's crazy. So, you're not into it. But I have a dear friend who married this guy, and I like the guy enough, and they live in Berkeley, and they really enjoy that kind of, I don't want to say hippie, but like alternative lifestyle. What became very clear is that he had a very specific view of the world, right? And I asked him at one point, we were discussing a client I had, a tutoring client I had in Piedmont, and this Piedmont client had put up an American flag, and somebody threw a rock through the window, and police figure out who threw the rock through the window because it was somebody from a school. And they go to the parents and they say, hey, look, your kid threw a rock through our window. Like, there's a floor-to-ceiling window. It's like $1,000. And the parents actually refused to participate in paying for it. They're like, we could charge, like, we could press charges here. It's $1,000. That's a problem. And the parents said, well, we don't necessarily agree with that they threw the rock through the window, but we agree with the sentiment. And I was like, what world do you live in, right? And so I asked this guy about it, my friend's husband, and he said, well, it's not necessarily America, but it's kind of like what America stands for and the things America has done in the past. I'm like, okay, let's back up. What planet are you on right now? And as such, you meet a lot of people. I met a lot of people in that community that I only found out later on were actually in law enforcement or retired servicemen or women, and they just didn't want to talk about it because they didn't know who they were talking to. They really only opened up and told people that they had served it under very specific circumstances. And here, you just don't, and God bless it, you just don't have that. Like, people can say, like, yeah, I was in the Air Force, yeah, I was in the Army, or yes, I was in the Marines. And people are like, awesome, thank you. Like, great. And not in like a weird way. A dear friend of mine who's in the Marines never wanted people to thank him for his service. He was like, people get so worked up over it, and it's almost like they're doing it in this weird, fanciful way, like they understood what they went through, but they didn't. So again, having a community where people can actually talk about their experience and be authentic to who they are and where they came from, it's such a beautiful thing being here.
That's Idaho. I mean, that's all I can say about that. Born and raised in Idaho. Idaho has always been, I don't necessarily want to say pro-law enforcement, pro-veteran, but they've been very patriotic, and they respect. You don't have to like what somebody does, but you should respect what they do, if that makes sense.
1,000%.
And Idahoans, for the majority, I would say, they respect what people have done for them and for the country to be the way the country is. If you don't like Idaho, that's okay. You know what? We have a thing called the First Amendment that gives you the right to say whatever you want. You don't have to like it. My thought on it, if you don't like it, there's the door. But
Yeah, you don't have to live here either.
You don't have to live here either, but you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, we're not asking you to move here.
No.
But we do have a lot of retired service members as well as retired first responders that are moving here with their families because they have found a sense of camaraderie. They've found that support. Not that they want to be acknowledged for what they've done, but so that they can live in a place where they feel safe, and that their values that they fought for and their were injured for or lost friends and family members for is honored. And it's just sad that politics have come into play, and I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, but to me, the American flag stands for freedom, and it's a melting pot. There is more diversity in America than there is in any other country in the world, and so the truth is the truth, and we want to support those who fought for our freedom and our liberty.
God bless him, man. So when I first came to Idaho in November 2021, right? Like I'm a recent immigrant, and man, I landed on the tarmac. I told somebody this the other day. I landed on the tarmac, and the warthogs are parked on the tarmac, and I look over and I'm like, God damn, look at that, man! And I instantaneously felt this welling up of patriotism and appreciation for it because, again, coming from the Bay Area, like I said, you just don't have the capacity to even safely fly an American flag. And it's like, how backwards is that? And here you have San Francisco, you have Berkeley, you have Oakland, some of the most protected real estate in the entire country, and you can't even appreciate the country you're sitting in. It's a problem, but not my problem anymore because, now I'm here. Cary, you grew up in Idaho. How did you find your way into the Marine Corps?
So a friend of the family, I cannot remember his name. He was a recruiter. Mark is his first name. I can't remember his last name. For the Marine Corps. Stayed with us for maybe a month or so, and then he got his own place. And I was like, that's pretty cool. I want to do that. So I joined.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Just like that. And I like their uniforms. You know, they're chick magnets.
Oh, look, man, I can't argue.
They look
with that.
pretty sharp.
Yeah, you don't look bad. My friend from the Marines, he actually had a Marine wedding, and so he was dressed up, as were his groomsmen. I wasn't in the service, so I didn't get a nice uniform, but. Man, they look good. They look sharp. That's for sure. He actually he married somebody who grew up as a Navy brat as well. She moved around a lot, and her dad was in the Navy for I think 30 years. And it was I don't know if they. I can't say for sure that they necessarily got together because they both understood the service at least to some degree, but that is what it seemed like, because they got together when he was still going on tours, and she was able to hang in there, and she understood how to support him, which I always appreciated about her. I mean, she was always this really, really hard, awesome woman. They have 4 boys, and seeing her navigate life, trying to deal with them is kind of awe-inspiring. But Cary, you were saying earlier that there are a lot of things that people servicemen, retired or otherwise, don't want to talk about unless they're talking to somebody who's been through the same thing, which is, it seems like that would produce a great gap or divide between spouses and spouses just in general if they both hadn't been enlisted.
Which I believe it does, which is why we also have I say spousal unit support group, because I don't know this, Jackie could answer this better than I could, but as a spouse of a first responder or veteran, your life is a lot different than a spouse of anybody else. Shift work, deployments, everything else, dealing with birthdays, holidays by yourself because your significant other's working or deployed somewhere is not normal for most Americans. But it's normal for first responders and veterans. It happens every day, all day. Yeah. And so personally, I think spousal units are tougher, the ones that are first responders and veterans, because they have to deal with a lot more, and it's harder for them. But they deserve our support, and they also can relate to each other better than even relating to me, just like I can relate better to a combat vet or a first responder because I've been there, done that. But everybody's been there, done that, if that makes sense. But you still share some things in common.
So, I'm sorry, yes?
I was going to say, I agree with that. So, I mean, I would say, being a spouse of a Marine Corps veteran, because I am married to a Marine as well. In fact, my husband served with Cary in Desert Storm. They were both deployed together, and that's how I originally met Cary. But he's also a first responder that just retired as well. We definitely have some challenges, but I consider it an honor, because even though I'm not out on the streets with him serving, we're basically their backup. We're their front line, and we're there to support them. And you definitely need to get some tools and some resources for yourself, because it can burn out. I mean, gosh, the divorce rates are 50 to 75% for our demographic. But I think that if we get people the tools and the resources to help them to know how to navigate it, and to get them the peer support, because being able to talk to another spouse, it's like, gets it, it's like a veteran talking to another combat veteran. It's like they get it, and I love my husband. We've been married for 32 years, but a lot of our marriage, it's basically been, I have been a single married person. And I have a lot of really great friends, and like I said, I consider it an honor, because it's my role to help with the kids, help support him. But I had to step back and learn how to do that, to not take things personal. We had to establish communication, plan and different things like that. If, for example, if he wasn't home in, 2 hours after his shift was supposed to be over, he's supposed to at least text me or call me. And if not, then after 4 hours, I could call dispatch and see if they could locate him. I think I had to do that maybe once in the almost 29 years that he was in law enforcement. But honestly, his time in the Marine Corps prepared me for him being a police officer as well, because compared to him being out in the desert, not having a clue, going weeks from not hearing from him, because they didn't have cell phones back then. He got to call on a sat phone, early 90s. You just learn and you appreciate that. And, I admire these guys and appreciate them so much for the service that they have done as well for our country and to take care of us and protect us.
Yeah, man, I couldn't imagine. Again, my wife gets worried, and God bless her, but, I think we're all so used to being connected now with text messages, and you can get a hold of somebody, you can find out where they are, you got Find Your Friend and stuff on your phone that you can understand where somebody is very quickly. And to imagine going weeks at a time without speaking to your spouse, especially when you know they're in a conflict zone, it's like, man, how you guys make through that's got to be a different thing. Yeah,
and compared to, we all want to compare, but really we shouldn't compare because we all have different journeys. But, to me, it was it was several weeks, but that's nothing compared to Korean War or Vietnam veterans and their spouses, even World War II. They'd go months and from not hearing from, their loved ones and stuff. So it just kind of is your perspective, and you learn to appreciate and be grateful for the time that you have, and,
just do your best.
Yep.
Hang in there.
Yep.
How did you get going in this?
So Courageous Survival, we started the organization. That comes from a very personal place for me. My husband being in the Marine Corps, serving for 8 years, and then being in law enforcement for almost 29. That was a lot to prepare us. We saw a lot of people struggling, especially veterans. A lot of people are starting to recognize the fact that we're losing 22 veterans a day. And people are finally starting to acknowledge that. But if you think about that for a second, 22 times 52 weeks in a year, that's over 8,000 veterans alone that we're losing to suicide. And that is just not acceptable. We started seeing around 2016, we started seeing a rise in first responder suicides, especially law enforcement. Here in the Treasure Valley area in Idaho, I'm a native as well, so this is my community. These are my people, my family, my friends, and our circles. And we lost actually between about 2017 and 2019, we lost about 7 first responders just in the Treasure Valley area alone to suicide. One of them was was from my husband's agency, Ada County, Ben Johnson, and I do still talk about him. We take him with us to a lot of our events. We have memorials that we do for them, and then we lost a Meridian officer to suicide as well that same year. Matt Enderlin. In fact, his dad, Daryl Enderlin, is on our nonprofit board, and he's very involved. He's a Marine Corps veteran, and he's phenomenal. He's a big part of why we have the PTSD legislation for first responders through workers' comp, because he got involved and he really helped. He went down, he testified before the Senate and the House, and those committees were left not a dry eye, and took Matt's portrait and stuff. We lost some paramedics, we lost some firefighters. And those were, friends of ours and close friends of other friends. And so it was like, okay, enough is enough. Plus our family, we adopted 2 girls from the Philippines, and we thought we were prepared for the layers of trauma and how to deal with that. We'd been through trainings, all kinds of stuff. We got them into counseling as soon as we got them. They were 12 and 14 when we adopted them, and we had an 11 and a half year old and a 14 and a half year old. So we thought, oh, we're good. We're not upsetting the chronological birth order. And my poor husband, he had 4 girls, all between 3 years apart. And it was less stressful for him to go to work than it was for him to be at home for probably about at least 4, 5, 6 years. It was a lot of trauma that went on in our home. We were not prepared for the level of trauma. We ended up having 4 traumatized girls instead of just 2. And 2 of them, the younger 2, our youngest biological and then our youngest adopted, actually attempted suicide. And our youngest spent 3 months in 3 different hospitals. And it was 4 days before we knew she was going to live at St. Luke's. Then she spent 18 at Intermountain. And I will be eternally grateful that they kept her alive. But the experience traumatized her more, and we were left with no resources. We knew she had said she would not fail again. And so we fought and fought to find resources, but nobody in the whole Pacific Northwest would take her because she was too suicidal and had too much layered trauma. And not even Blue Cross at the time was our insurance carrier with Ada County, and not even they could help us find somebody that would take her. And so we just kept praying, and you know, we're people of faith, so our faith has been a big part of our journey. And so we actually got a huge miracle. We got her into a facility back in Indiana, and she was there for 8 weeks, and it saved her life. But the majority of people don't have that opportunity. They don't get that chance. And so as soon as we were able to get through what we were going through, I fought and fought for resources, not to just keep them alive, but to help them get their lives back. To find resources and stuff, and just, you know, that fighting for resources. And if you kind of picture Jacob in the Bible, you know, wrestling with God all night and refusing to let go until God blessed him. You know, that's my name Jacki comes from Jacob, and that's kind of been like a picture of how I view how I fight for things and for the people that I love, is like, I'm not going to settle for anything less than the best of what God has for them, and not just for my family, but for those other people as well. And so I fought for resources, started learning about them, started realizing, oh my gosh, there's some amazing resources out there. People just don't know about them. And so that's where we identified the gap, was that people just need to be connected and know about the resources and have some support. And so I traveled for a couple of years. I looked at starting a nonprofit here in Idaho, but the door opened for me to travel nationally and to organize 2-day mental health and wellness trainings all across the country. And we were doing, for about 2 years, we were doing another conference, 2-day conference for 200 to 300 first responders and veterans every day, and their spouses, every month, and in a different state. But it was keeping me too busy and too far away from Idaho, because I kept hearing about people struggling and needing resources here, but I didn't have the time to really develop those resources and vet them. Because we got to have resources, especially for first responders, veterans, and their families. You got to have resources that are very knowledgeable, very culturally competent. And what I mean by culturally competent is they know that demographic. Right. They know the language. They know the experiences. Like we were mentioning earlier, a combat veteran's going to want to talk to a combat veteran. A therapist, not just any therapist, can really be effective with first responders or veterans or even their spouse and their kids, because we're all impacted by that vicarious trauma. Most first responders, by the time that they retire, 25, 30 years, they've seen 800 plus major traumatic experiences. And I'm not just talking about somebody's broken leg. I'm talking about very massive trauma that they've seen and experienced going out on calls, or a veteran while they're serving in the military. And so most therapists aren't prepared for that level of trauma. And so 2 minutes into the session, they're needing their own dang counselor. And so it's really important to have resources that are vetted, that are culturally competent, and that they can really help them. But I started learning about more and more, and so I had that opportunity, and it really was awesome, because then I was able to help bring those resources back and that knowledge back to Idaho, and looked at saying, okay, how can we make a difference here? And we started originally as an LLC. I founded the Courageous Survival in August 2 years ago of 2020, and started, working, connecting people. The Professional Firefighters of Idaho jumped in, helped us produce the first resource guide. It was 16 pages, and we've expanded it each quarter. We update it over the last 2 years, and it's up to 28 pages of valued resources, everything from crisis lines to counselors, as I mentioned, PTSD programs, facilities, nonprofits that help pay for stuff, organizations, veteran organizations that can help, first responder organizations, all kinds of different resources that are in our resource guide. And then I started realizing, as I was meeting with people, I'm a spouse, and I have a lot of knowledge and experience, and I've had a lot of training on mental health. I'm not a clinician, but I have had quite a bit of training on intervention and mental health, but I'm still not Cary's peer. I'm still not a first responder's peer. And so I can't relate at that level. And so I actually asked Cary and another gal, she's our co-lead for our military and veterans team. She's a Navy veteran. I asked them at first if they would join me and stuff. And then that was around the time too that Code 3-1 came to us and said, hey, would you help us with developing peer support teams? And it really launched us into, okay, this is awesome. Let's have peer support teams for all those different demographics. They get the same trainings. They're under the same, standard operating procedure manuals, that kind of stuff, all the policies, procedures, trainings on intervention. And we're trained to help in a crisis situation. However, that's not our role. Our role is 24 to 48 hours response. We are trained in those critical incidents because if you get in that situation and then you realize that person is actually struggling, you have the skills and ability then to do a soft handoff to a crisis resource and stuff. So it's been really great to see how that's developed. We, like I said, we partner with Professional Firefighters of Idaho. We pulled in Idaho State Fraternal Order of Police. They wanted to do the same thing for their agencies and their organization across the state. We were already a little bit ahead of the game, so instead of recreating the wheel, they said, hey, why don't we partner with you? We love what you're doing, and let's support that. And so they jumped in. American Legion, we partner with them as well. They've got 99 posts across the state. And so how great it is that we can have that kind of impact if we get resources and training to, each of those posts, and then they can have a bigger impact in the community as well. So it just kind of grew, and just the more collaborations that happened, NAMI Idaho, we do a lot of work with the Department of Health and Welfare, the public health districts, Idaho Retired Law Enforcement Association, and other organizations, nonprofits, businesses. It's we're in a unique position because there's all these amazing resources out there. People just don't know about them, and that's where we come in that middle part. We help them navigate those resources, because even having the resource guides it's great. I've had so many people go, oh man, I wish I'd even had one of these resources when I was struggling. And so I'm glad that they're there. But at the same time, when you are struggling, or you've got a loved one struggling, you're like, where do I even start? And so that's a big role of our peer support team, is to help navigate those resources. And so that's been amazing. And I will also mention Elevate Mind Body Studios. They were a big part of Courageous Survival Birthing. I had done some work with them. Elevate Mind Body Studios is in Nampa. It's a fitness and wellness center, and they've got float pods, sensory deprivation, massage chairs, red light, pain light, infrared light, Himalayan salt room with halotherapy, all these incredible wellness facility modalities. And as I traveled, because I had gotten to know them when we brought some of those trainings here to Idaho, they got involved with those, and they helped support the first responders and veterans and their families. And so I knew them and I worked with them already, but they came to me and said, hey, we want to do something for 9/11. This was 2020, and said, we want to honor our first responders, our veterans, and their families. Will you help us organize some kind of event? And so that's where the 9/11 event kind of birthed. And that's also where Courageous Survival birthed. It gave us that platform to really start getting those resources out there. And they offered their entire facility for free for the whole day for first responders, veterans, active military, their spouse or significant other. And we do include coroners, chaplains, clinicians that work with them closely, that kind of stuff. As well. And so that was really amazing to have that opportunity. And then it just kind of kept growing from there. And then Elevate started doing, not just on 9/11, but on the 11th of every month, we are down there. Cary and I are, volunteer down there as ambassadors for our demographic. And we get to do tours and meet with them, talk to them about resources. So on the 11th of every month, they do one of those services for free. But on 9/11, the entire facility is free. We have a resource fair. The first year, Nampa Mayor Debbie Kling jumped in. I asked her if she would be willing to, and the City Council, to do a proclamation making 9/11 Elevate Our Everyday Heroes Day. So it really started in Nampa, and I'm excited to get to say that we've got 7 cities now in the Treasure Valley that are participating in that and declaring 9/11 Elevate Our Everyday Heroes Day. mayors and city council members and police chiefs and stuff are coming to represent the city this Saturday. We've got a resource fair that is just phenomenal, over 20 different mental health and wellness resources specific to those demographic, some of them coming in from around the Pacific Northwest to be a part of it. We've got food trucks, live music, Vet Center, Mobile Center will be there. Just some incredible resources, axe throwing. It's really a community fair.
Yeah. Of everything you said, you're like, and we have axes.
Yes.
It's great.
Yeah. No, it's fun. Axe throwing's kind of become a big deal. Axe throwing, cornhole, beer garden, music, just all that camaraderie, just to come have some fun. Yeah. But at 10 o'clock, we're actually having a really cool tribute. We do this each year. The proclamations are read. We have the American Legion Riders coming in with procession with their bikes, and some of the Iron Warriors are joining them as well. That's retired law enforcement motorcycle group. And then we've also got the Honor Guard from the American Legion, Missing Man Table. They'll be doing a ceremony for that. We've got Mama Ginger, who is an incredible resource. She's a first responder chaplain. She's been feeding first responders around the United States for 18 years with her soup ladies. They've been at Uvalde, Las Vegas, all kinds of places across the U.S. where they've responded and feed first responders on the ground. She'll be doing the remembrance stuff and talking in the moment of silence and the prayer. We've got different speakers coming in from some of the organizations that we work with across the state to talk about mental health and wellness and what we're all doing together in that collaboration. It's going to be really cool. And of course, we'll be honoring the fallen from 9/11. There's a lot of people that don't realize how many first responders, especially, we have lost since 9/11, not just initially, but in the 21 years since then, there has been thousands and thousands that we've lost because of the side effects from them responding to the Twin Towers and stuff like that. And so we'll be honoring them as well. And so that's going to be a great event. Cary, is there anything else I'm missing about the event on Saturday?
No, I mean, normally the event is always on 9/11, but with 9/11 being Sunday this year, it's going to be on the 10th. But it's still the 9/11 event on the 10th of September.
How did you do all of this in 2 years? Because you said, as you're going through stuff, like, wait, did she say August 2020? Because you have essentially organized and mobilized like this mass movement towards mental health and support for, I mean, it's not just first responders. It's not just vets. It's not just active duty. It's not just those individuals. It's their spouses. And like, how did you do all this in 2 years?
Well, like I said earlier, I'm a person of faith, and so that's a big part of who I am and a part of my story. And I just really feel like, you got to be willing. But honestly, I give all the credit to the Lord. And, there's so many people that have come together. I'm just honored and humbled that I get to be an empty vessel of light for those people in the darkness. And you can also liken it to flag bearers, which is why we chose in our logo to have a flag on there, not just an American flag. That's really important to us, but also the fact that there's a flag, because we basically are flag bearers. We, when maybe Cary, you can speak a little bit more to this, but my understanding is that during a battle, especially during early years, that the flag bearer's role was to hold that flag. And that the troops got to see that the battle, that they hadn't lost and that they were still fighting and there was still hope for the battle when they saw that flag. And so, that is kind of our role, is being that flag bearer and being that light in the darkness. And, I can't explain. I don't, sorry, I'm around a lot of first responders and veterans. So, honestly, you can't make a lot of this shit up because so many things have come together with all the different collaborations, Professional Firefighters of Idaho, Idaho State Fraternal Order of Police, Code 3-1, American Legion, NAMI Idaho, all these different collaborations. It's beautiful to see how many people are working together towards the same goal. And it's been a privilege and it's been amazing. And, I just told you about the peer support teams, the resource guide, the events that we do. And I just kind of touched the surface a little bit. There is some other stuff that we've done that I will share that we've actually got to do outreach in all 7 regions of the entire state of Idaho. Now, that doesn't mean that we've reached every county, but we have had some impact in every region of the state. We have peer support teams in different parts of the state. We have peer support members, and it's been amazing. All the people, just like I said, working together over the last year and a half with American Legion and NAMI Idaho. And then whatever area that we're going to, we've pulled in. Like the first year we did a whole week of mental health training specifically for first responders and veterans and suicide intervention in Idaho Falls area, and Bonneville County Sheriff Sam Hulse and the PIO for their sheriff's office. He's also the state president for FOP. That's the Fraternal Order of Police. And so we worked with them, and they co-hosted the training, and we did 2-day, suicide intervention trainings. We did the 90-minute. We did, Deer Hollow came in and did, a trauma-focused mental health and wellness training. It was also centered around a law enforcement conference that was already happening through the Hispanic Cultural Affairs. They did that. And so we all worked together, and we brought that first training there. And since then, we've been able to do trainings like that, 2- and 3-day trainings in different regions. We even did a 2-day training down in Duck Valley Indian Reservation as well. And we expanded not just to the first responders and veterans in that area, but also we invited community to come in, because down a lot on the Indian reservations, it's peers. They're not necessarily going to reach out if somebody's struggling to a first responder or to a behavioral health counselor. They're going to talk to their grandma, or they're going to talk to their uncle or their buddy or whatever. And so helping them establish some peer support. They've got some great things going on down there. And so we were able to come in and help, with them establishing. We went up. It was exciting. This last June, we actually, just a couple months ago, American Legion, as a part of our strategic plan, they had us come into their state convention, and we trained 85 of the 101 that were registered there. We're talking post commanders, auxiliary leaders, which is the spouses and sons of the American Legion, all there, including the national commander and some commanders from out of state as well. We trained them all in a 90-minute QPR, which is question, persuade, refer, so that they at least got 90 minutes of suicide intervention training, and then they were certified. That's the first time that that's ever happened, to my knowledge, across the United States. So doing that QPR training at the American Legion State Convention, they actually canceled some national speakers and some state representatives and stuff like that, because they wanted to give that 2-hour time period so that we could do the training, talk to them about resources and stuff. And then the goal is then those leaders go back to all the different 99 posts across the state, and they at least have some basic knowledge, so that if a veteran is struggling or if somebody calls, they at least have some skills, and then the resource guides to know what to do or how to direct them to. And so we're having more of them step up to become instructors. We're doing more of these trainings, like I said, in different regions of the state as well. And it's been amazing. And you ask, how have we done it all? And I will just say, I have no idea. Talk to the guy upstairs. Yeah. Because every time we turn around, we're having another divine appointment, and call it providence, call it whatever. Not everybody a part of our organization is a Christian or a person of faith, but it is a big part of who a lot of us are. And whether it's your higher power or you look to the Lord, just like, you literally can't make this shit up, because there's a lot of people that are coming together, and it takes people laying down their egos, their agendas, and working together. Doesn't matter who gets the credit, but let's get people the help that they need. And I'll tell you a beautiful story that happened this last year is we had a veteran who's a first responder, and we actually had his veteran service officer reach out to us and say, hey, I need to get this guy connected with peer support and some resources. We also had his administrative, I'll have to be careful because I don't want to give away what demographic he was, but we had one of his second in command of their department contact as well and say, hey, we need to get this guy some help. He's struggling. And we got him connected with some resources, got him into some mental health training as well. And that was an incredible experience to see all those different people coming together and working together to get this person the help that they need. And it's my understanding that he had planned on checking out and And so that was really an amazing blessing to get to be a part of that and see that. But again, it wasn't just one person. It was all these different people that care, just doing their little part to make it happen. So,
man, there's a lot there. There's a lot, all incredible stuff. Cary, you guys knew each other from the early 90s, as you said.
Correct.
But you said you only got involved in this like a year or so ago. Now,
year and a half or so.
What drew you into it?
So, well, I attended a course to start with, and that's how I reconnected with Jacki. But I've always believed there's a need to talk about suicide with first responders and veterans, to talk about mental illness with first responders and veterans. I didn't know where to find all the resources. Somebody, this gal over here, came up with a resource guide that I was like, holy shit, this is the holy grail, so to speak. And I wanted to help people out. I've suffered myself with PTSD and dealt with it in weird, crazy ways, and then found stuff that worked for me. And I'm like, if stuff will work for me, maybe I can help you find something that'll work for you. I will not fix anybody. And I tell them that straight up. I said, look, if you're looking to me to fix you, you're barking up the wrong tree. That's not my job. That's not what I do. I will talk to you. I will get to know you to where I'll say, I think this might be good for you if you're willing to try it. And I might bug you a little bit for you to go try it. And if you tell me it works great, it works great. You tell me it's shitty, we find something else for you, which is the wonderful thing about the resource guide is there's so many resources, and once you become familiar with them, you can turn around and state, I feel like this would work for you. But I'm also one of the guys that if I haven't done it, I'm not going to tell you how it works or how it doesn't work. I like doing it myself, and then I'll say, it worked for me, or it was all right, but nothing big. I know one of Jacki's best stories that she likes telling is
You've been holding out on us. You've been holding of all the things you told me. You're holding out on your best story.
So I'll tell it because it involves me. I'm a retired First Sergeant Marine Corps. Retired sergeant who was in charge of person crimes, law enforcement, and I was in charge of our SWAT team. I mean, I'm a knuckle dragger, just, eat crayon Marine type of guy. And we were down at Elevate in their salt room. I might have meditated or done breath work or something one time or two in my life. So I'm sitting there with two other Marines, combat Marines. One of them is teaching us breath work in the salt room. So you have three crayon-eating, knuckle-dragging Marines doing this breath work and everything. And once we get done with it, I'm just sitting there taking it all in, and I go, this shit works. And it was like a light bulb clicked in my brain housing group, and I was like, this shit really works. I mean, people might think it's hippie guru bullshit or whatever. It works for me. And I think breath work would work for a lot of people. And there's other things that work for people that you don't have to take a pill every day to be okay. There's other things that can help you out. And I think the way that Jacki had this blow up like it did, which I'll say it blew up, is there was people out there that knew we had to talk about suicide, knew we had to talk about mental health with first responders and veterans. And they wanted to help. And maybe one or two were doing their own thing, but they didn't have guidance, and it wasn't structured, and they didn't have all the resources available to them. Jacki shows up. She's got this, like I said, the Holy Grail, the resource guide, and everybody's like, I like that. That's what I want to do. I want to be a part of that. I want our group to be a part of that because it's positive and it's going to happen and we need it. And so that's how you she got all these other agencies and groups to say, no, there's 10 or 20 of us who have been talking about we need to do this, just don't know how to do it. You're doing it. Do you mind if we help you do it? Because you already have the structure and you already know what the hell you're doing, and you can help us to where we know what we're doing. That's how it blew up.
What you were saying initially when you were sitting there, you're doing breath work, and you kind of had that epiphany, which is like, oh, this actually really, really works. To what degree do you think people fight themselves with trying to get help?
I think people fight it a lot for a long time, and then there's got to be something that triggers you to seek help. My trigger was at the time my spousal unit wanted a divorce and crap that was going on with that. We are divorced, but that was a trigger for me to where I was like, yeah, maybe I am a little messed up, or maybe my brain housing group ain't the best it's supposed to be, and I need help. So I think that goes through every veteran and first responder, to where they're like, I don't need no help. I'm macho. I'm a knuckle dragger, crayon eating individual. I don't need the help. And then something happens to them in their life, and hopefully we get to them before they harm themselves or commit suicide. And they want help to do something. They don't know what to do. And they're like, I don't want to take 50 meds and be a zombie, but I'll try whatever. And so they're just willing to try because they don't want to lose what they had, or they don't want to stay in that slump of not going nowhere, feeling like crap, and just sitting around and waiting for glue to dry.
Yeah, and honestly, it wasn't just the next day that, when I said to Cary, hey, you need to come down to Elevate, check out the resources.
Yeah.
I think it took almost 3 years to actually get him into Elevate. That's some med spa that, whatever, send his wife to. And he's got an amazing wife now, and has got a beautiful family and stuff like that. And she's so supportive, and she'll call me and she'll say, hey, Jacki, you need to get Cary down there again. He always comes back in a better mood after he's been down at Elevate and helping people and stuff too. But, it took a while to get him to try the float pods, to get him to try, even after he became an ambassador. I think it was like 6 months later that he was actually in that Himalayan salt room with the other 2 Marines, doing the breath work. And that's, like I said earlier, that's when he realized, holy crap, I was in that room too. And so that was why it's one of my favorite stories, is because that was one of my favorite days last year, is to see that happen and to see that transition happen, because they're hesitant to try that stuff. They're like, whatever, that's for somebody else, that's hippy dippy mumbo jumbo. But it actually works, and it's phenomenal. And that's why, for example, if we've got a veteran or a first responder that's wanting to come down and try the services, I call Cary. Cary does the tours. We've got our retired law enforcement officer, our outreach director, John Drinkwine. He's going to get trained as well in another one of our team as well, because it makes a difference when they're talking about it. Rather than, the staff at Elevate is phenomenal. They're all trained as wellness consultants, and they can advise people if you got a bad shoulder, bad back, whatever, protocols and stuff like that. But they recognize that it's important to have that demographic down there. And so their owner and their general manager are so supportive. In fact, they're actually on the board of our nonprofit as well. And so it kind of is our operating place out of, even though we do a lot of outreach across the state, we meet with probably at least 3 to 15 people down at Elevate each week, and get to do a VIP tour, get them in the Himalayan salt room, offer to teach them the breath work, and then also get them a pass that's worth over $500 worth of services that they can come in and try it for free. And then if they do find something that it works, they get to come back and have half off, which is phenomenal. And like Cary said, everybody's journey is different. And so some people that might be really helpful for them. Some people it may not be. So that's another part of why we as a peer support team, we vet the resources really carefully. We got to do 12 of our team last fall got to go through an intensive outpatient program that had equine therapy, neurofeedback, breath work, all kinds of amazing program through intensive healing therapy with Johnny Uratia and his team. That was phenomenal because they got to experience it personally. And so they got not only got the resources for themselves, because we're all battling our stuff, right? To keep maintaining. But when you're doing this work, you have to guard against compassion fatigue as well, because we take on those other people's stuff because we care about them. And so it's really important to maintain their mental health and wellness also.
I hate to interrupt. Can you explain compassion fatigue?
Yeah, compassion fatigue. Cary, do you want to talk about compassion fatigue?
Sure. So to me, compassion fatigue is when, on the peer support team, and I'm listening to people all the time and trying to help them out and everything else. After a while, because you take on all of that yourself. After a while, if you don't take care of yourself, then you're going to start going down the rabbit hole with them or alongside them, or your own rabbit hole, where you're going to start getting depressed. You're going to start doing things. So a lot of what we do, or what I do, is you have to have avenues to break out of that. If it's going down to Elevate and doing a cocoon and a float, which I love to do, which helps kind of reset me, or going up to the hills and being by yourself with nature for a day, or whatever, you have to have a way to reset. Jacki loves riding motocross, so her and her husband go motocross riding. It's a way to release all of that to where you don't just get all that on your shoulders and you feel like there's no help for you. There is, and that's why you have to take care of yourself. And we keep an eye on one another and say, hey, what have you done for yourself lately?
So it's kind of like to put your oxygen mask on first.
Yeah.
Or else you're going to be
Exactly.
done pretty fast.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I cannot relate to all the things you guys are talking about. Again, I come from a family that has a lot of servicemen in it, servicemen and women, and but as a parent, just as an average person who's trying to raise kids, it's the same. It's like, God, man, if you don't take care of yourself at all, you become depressed, you become resentful, and that's obviously you're in a far worse state, or sometimes completely incapable of taking care of your kids if you get into that situation. So just from an average civilian standpoint, not having somebody like this in my household, I kind of want to go down to Elevate myself and have a little float.
Well, actually, Elevate is open to the general public. Lots of people are able to go in there, and it's been, especially with COVID over the last couple of years, it's been a great avenue for a lot of people to check out. And sometimes I meet people who aren't of that demographic. If people reach out and ask for help, we're going to do our best to get them the help that they need. And especially with COVID, there were so many people that they were on the edge of maybe struggling with some mental health and wellness stuff. And then COVID hit and boom, they're over the cliff. And people who were nowhere even near the edge are now near the edge, or even have fallen over the edge as well. There's so much increased anxiety and depression and all of that stuff because of COVID. Again, no politics involved, but there's a lot of people really struggling. And so a lot of these tools, I met with a family, it's a first responder family, but their 12 and 10-year-olds were struggling as well because of some stuff that was going on. And so we met them down at Elevate, taught them some breath work. And it was really cool to get to see, a 10-year-old boy who's got ADD, or, a 12-year-old girl who's struggling with anxiety, or, another family that their 13-year-old was struggling with suicide, and get them connected with resources that can really help them as well. Or meet them out at the ranch, at Johnny's ranch, and do some equine therapy and teach them the breath work. And because that's originally where that breath work comes from, is we've learned it from Johnny's team with him, and he developed that off of the Wim Hof. Have you ever heard of Wim Hof?
Oh yeah, I have.
Okay.
We're planning on a cold dip this winter, like the whole. Yeah, I'm a big fan of breath work, and I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And you have to be really, really mindful. I actually do breath work after training, and I had a routine before I would go into competitions. 'Cause competitions for me were just astronomically stressful. I'm not a fighter by nature. I'm like a very loving guy, and I hate conflict. It's like, all right, so here's the deal. You see that 200-pound dude who's like a gorilla. He's going to try to choke you or break your arm, and like you're going to have to stop him from doing it. And in fact, you have to like get him somehow. So for me, it was this horrible thing, and it brought up a lot of anxieties from childhood, that just like being a younger brother, getting beat up by my brother. And it's like all of a sudden I'm this little 7-year-old again who's like helpless, but I'm like a 40-year-old guy on stage, right? And so there were a lot of strategies with breath work where I would, oddly enough, I'd press in actual training. When I felt competent, I felt safe. I was training with friends, and we were, obviously training very aggressively, but I didn't feel like I was threatened. I'd do a routine where I'd actually press my tongue up against the roof of my mouth and take these deep breaths through my nose and very calmly shut my eyes and kind of like jump up and down in between these sets. And I'd program my mind to feel this real sense of calm and, competence and ability in those moments when I went through that routine. And then fast forward to competition, 30 seconds before I'd going on, I'd shut my eyes and go through the exact same routine. And it brought a sense of like, okay, you're not the 7-year-old, right? And don't even think about the fact that you're going to compete against someone. Just imagine yourself back training with your friends. And yeah, they were trying to kill you too, but they were your friends and you were safe and you were okay. So like, it's all right. And that got me through a lot of really, and again, for the average person, it's like, they don't understand. And again, I'm not saying I understand what you guys and your spouses and whatnot have went through, but for the average person, they don't understand an organized fight where you literally could just be taken out of consciousness and you just wake up. You hope you wake up and everything's okay. So there's a lot of stress there, and for me, that was a very real way that I was able to navigate it and get through some really, for me, very difficult competitions and stressful engagements.
Yeah, and there's a lot of science behind the breath work, and I'm not going to pretend to know all of the science, but Johnny's really great at explaining it and how it works, and even the breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth, and then holding your breath for a certain amount of time afterwards. That all comes from the Wim Hof, and if you've not.
Yes.
If you who are listening have not heard of Wim Hof, you got to look him up, Google him. He's the crazy Iceman, and he has like 27 different Guinness World Records that, and it all has to do with the breath work. He has swam under 300 feet of ice. He's been submerged in an ice bath up to his neck for almost 2 hours, I think is what it is. There's multiple different things, and he's been able to do all of that. Even in the ice bath, he was able to be submerged without his core body temperature changing for that entire time, and he did that through breath work. And it's phenomenal what you can do to control your autonomic nervous system, because when we get in fight or flight mode, or if people have been through maybe childhood trauma, stuff gets triggered. If you're go through a lot of trauma, that you're stuck in that hypervigilant state, you're stuck in that fight, flight, or freeze mode, you need to get your brain and your body back into the parasympathetic. And so it really helps you to be able to do that. And the more that you do it, and I heard you referred to it, that like your body remembers, that muscle memory remembers that, you're not supposed to do breath work while you're driving or while you're fighting, because you don't want to pass out. But at the same time, even if you just pause and put your tongue on the roof of your mouth and take a few deep breaths, your brain and your body immediately, recognize that, and it, tips you back into more of a calm space and stuff like that. It's pretty powerful what you can actually do.
Yeah, and again, for me, it was limited to a couple, obviously extracurricular activities. It's not like, I did some pro fights, but it wasn't how I was making my money. But it is profound how, on a deep human level, I was so stressed and so terrified. And again, as a 30-year-old, 35 or 40-year-old, it's like, why do I feel like I'm just some like little kid who's like helpless? I was like, before these fights, I'd literally be crying backstage, just bawling my eyes out. And of course, try to do it so nobody sees me, but I'm going through this traumatic experience of like, you're not even on stage. Like, you're not even on the mat and you're crying. Like, what is... That really pointed out to me, like, look, you're having an experience that is completely unrelated to this. And unless you figure out a way to get yourself out of the experience you're having in your head and come back to the real world, one, you're going to get wrecked in front of everyone because you won't be able to function. And two, this will dominate your decisions. It will dominate how you move through the world. It will dominate the things that you're willing to put yourself into, the fear factors that you're willing to tolerate. Your coping mechanisms just aren't there. And so for me, forcing myself through those competitions and ultimately figuring out ways to cope with them was my process of like, all right, look, you have to grow out of these experiences because you're not that person anymore. And in, your own children, I have 3 boys and I take care of them as best I can, but they will grow up as human beings with their own traumas and their own issues. And unless you do what you need to do to figure out how to work through this stuff, you're not going to be able to help them either. Right? Like you're not going to be able to guide them. You're not going to be able to be the best dad you can be if you haven't ironed out your own things. You're just going to be, quarterbacking from the bench, which I never wanted to do.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you brought up childhood trauma, and I know you've said it repeatedly. You can't understand what it's like to be a first responder or a veteran, sure. But you also got to remember that trauma is trauma.
Right.
And we have to be careful not to compare trauma. It is important to have vetted resources that can help our demographic specifically, but it doesn't mean that other people within the general population have not experienced severe trauma. And I don't know about the general population demographics, but I know that 75 to 80% of first responders and veterans have experienced some type of childhood trauma is what they're learning. And when you have that childhood trauma, everybody goes through it and is like, yeah, I survived, I'm resilient, whatever, but your body keeps the score. And, it may be 30 years into being a firefighter where it's that last fire that tips your bucket over, and then all that other stuff starts spilling out. We've seen it happen with Vietnam veterans even, that they've been working because first responders and veterans, they're type A personalities. They're going to boom, boom, boom. They're serving their country, they're serving in their community, they're the little league coach, they're, youth group leader, they're serving in their community and all their free time as well. And so as soon as they retire and start slowing down, their brain starts downloading and pausing, and more of that stuff comes out. Or it could be that last incident that triggers it. It could be an incident like what you're talking about, that you were going through a really stressful situation with competing and stuff. And I used to be an athlete as well, so I get that nervousness and that anxiety before competitions and stuff. But it triggers something in your brain that it's recognizing something in your childhood that it's bringing up because your body kept that score and is remembering it. And so it's really important to acknowledge that. And honestly, a lot of the best programs that I've seen in the country, Deer Hollow Wellness and Recovery Center, Save a Warrior, some of the best therapists, they deal with the underlying trauma. Jake Clark, the founder of Save a Warrior, calls it the thing under the thing. And we saw that with the therapist that helped our girls to deal with their underlying trauma. It wasn't really us as a family that they were reacting to, but it was the trauma that they had experienced on the streets of Manila when they were with their birth mom, and that severe poverty and that severe stuff that they went through that was causing them to react. It's kind of that same thing. Doesn't mean that they're not tough, but it triggers stuff when you're in combat or when you're a first responder, especially if it's like you got kids around that same age and you go in and you go to a child's death or whatever. That can trigger some real big stuff with people, and it can tie back to childhood. And so dealing with that stuff, it is amazing. For example, I had the honor to sit in the seat at Save a Warrior 3.5 years ago. It's a 3.5-day program, 72 hours. They've had over 1,900 first responders and veterans go through it in 10 years, and they've only lost 7 alumni that they know of to suicide. And that is an amazing program. When we're losing 22 veterans a day, that's over 8,000 a year, and their program has only lost 7 that we know of to suicide in 10 years. The DAV gave them $1 million grant 1.5 years ago so they could expand their facilities. They could get more and more people through it. And it's one of the best, but it's because they bring these guys together, first responders and veterans, because they're really cut out of the same cloth. They really are. They bring them together. They deal with a lot of that stuff that's underlying. They give them the tools, the experience to put them through that. like I said, programs like Deer Hollow do that as well. And when they do that, it really helps them process that trauma, because all those years the body's been keeping that score and you didn't realize it. And you need to be able to have an outlet for that trauma to process, to grieve the losses that you haven't grieved, stuff like that. And then to watch first responders and veterans be able to deal with so much easier. And I say easier, but it's not easy. It's painful. The cure is painful, but they're so much more effective at dealing with their post-traumatic stress injuries, PTSD, in the moment, as opposed to once they've dealt with that underlying trauma, if that makes sense. It's just phenomenal to watch the transformation that can happen.
Gosh, guys. Well, listen, I know we had a lot in an hour to talk. Cary, is there anything you want to say? Because I know we've chatted a lot.
Probably about all I can state is, as a community and as a nation, in my opinion, we need to be talking about suicide for everybody and mental health. That's a huge problem in the United States, in my opinion. And it gets multiplied when you experience trauma over and over and over and over again, which is first responders and veterans for the most part. And so it needs to be talked about. It needs to be out there. And people shouldn't be afraid to talk about suicide. And I think people still are. It's not as bad as it was, but it's still a no-no word, which is bullshit. It shouldn't be. You should be able to talk about suicide. And you should be able to, if you have a friend or a family member that you're questioning, you should be able to talk to them and at least know where to call to get them help. Which there's national hotline numbers for all of that. And we're just trying to help facilitate that. Like I said, the resource guide is amazing because there's so many resources out there that people don't know about. It's unreal. There's something out there for everybody to help somebody out. And if you don't have the money to pay for it, there possibly is something to help that out. So I think we need to talk about it more and just continue help out your neighbor, help out whoever. I mean, you see a veteran down the road or a first responder that you know somewhere, hit them up one day and just say, hey, bud, how you doing? You want to go get a cup of coffee? You want to, just to try to get their mind off. I'm not saying go talk to them and say, are you suicidal?
Right.
But
right.
Just go talk to them and say, hey, let's go get a cup of coffee and go fishing or bullshit about this or that or the football game or something, because then it gives them a sense of worth and a sense of maybe somebody does give a shit about me.
Yeah, my dad told me when he came back from Vietnam, he was stationed in Texas for a little while, and he got a care package from his sister, and it was cookies and some other stuff and some pictures, and he said that it really brought him back to the world because before he got that, he had seen so many of his friends be killed that he didn't really think he was worth that much when he came back. And just having that care package and that love, I mean, just like home baked cookies after you're flying helicopters in Vietnam. He said that was one thing that actually brought him back into the world and made him feel like he had value again. So, when you're talking about just asking somebody if they want to go fishing or grab a cup of coffee or something, it's like, I don't think my aunt really thought that baking him cookies was going to, save his life in that way, but he said it really did. And,
I will say the most valuable thing you can give anybody is your time. That's the most valuable thing you can give anybody. So give up 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Totally, I will 100% agree with that. Your time and helping them to understand that they're valued and they're worth it, because so many people feel like they're not. Even first responders and veterans, they're out there serving the community. One of the tools that we give people, and I'll grab this from you real quick. One of the tools that we give people, and it's again one of those hippy dippy things, you might say, but it's got positive affirmations on it, and it says you are handsome. Has anybody told you today, that Matt, that you are handsome and amazing and totally worth it?
I think my wife bought me a new shirt, and she was like, "You look very handsome in the new shirt." But it was the new shirt. It wasn't me. I'm a hollow shell.
So did you see what you just did? You deflected. So
No, that's an honest answer. That's
So you're not alone. A lot of people, women, I can't speak for men, but women, somebody will give us a compliment and we'll say, oh, this is just what I had left over. Everything else in the closet's dirty. We don't really receive it. Guys, they'll deflect as well. They'll be like, yeah, I know I'm handsome. Or like what you did. Oh, my wife got me this shirt.
You did not tell me I was handsome. You asked if somebody told me I was handsome, which is you did not give me a compliment. You asked if I had received one yet.
Okay.
That's a different thing. You can't pin that on me or my wife. I'm sure she thinks I'm very handsome.
So
I hope actually. I don't know.
You are handsome
I
and you are
appreciate you.
amazing and you are worth it. So this is for you. It says that. And then if every day, if you say out loud to those statements, so it's important because it says you are on it because we need to receive it. We're good at giving compliments, but we don't receive them because it's not what we tell ourselves in our brain. But you can reroute those neural pathways because what we say and believe about ourselves, we are our worst enemy. Some of the things that we say to ourselves, our worst enemy would not say to us. But it's the truth that our brain lives with. And so the more that you do that, you say those things out loud every single day. I am handsome, I am kind, I am strong, I am worth it. It sounds awkward and weird at first, but it actually works. It reroutes your neural pathways the same way that our brains are neuroplastic and they can be affected by trauma. You can learn to reroute those neural pathways and actually make a difference. And so that's a very powerful tool that we use and give out to people as well. And I would say I agree with Cary, is your time. Definitely letting them know that they're worth your time is huge, and not being afraid to talk about it. I mean, if the subject does come up, people you love, people you know, whatever, don't be afraid to talk about suicide. Don't be afraid to talk about mental health. A lot of people think talking about it's going to put the idea in somebody's head. That's not true. You can go through some of the trainings and you can learn what to say and what to do to help people, but don't be afraid to ask. That's all it takes sometimes for people to go, oh, yeah, I guess I was thinking about that or whatever. Or you call them out on it and you get them the help that they need, right? But a lot of what we do, too, is helping people realize that there's nothing wrong with them, that it's okay to not be okay. That's why people like Cary, who share their stories and their struggles with PTSD, and we use the word PTSD pretty much predominantly with, our culture does, but we're really trying to shift that language to PTSI, which is post-traumatic stress injuries, because what it actually happens when you're exposed to trauma, especially repeatedly, it can create a biological injury within your brain, a physical injury. Your amygdala can shrink, your hippocampus changes sizes, your neural pathways reroute, and that actually creates an injury in your brain. And so it's not something you can see. It's an invisible wound, but it doesn't mean it's not there. And so getting people the help that they need to realize that and being able to break those stigmas down, it's really crucial to be able to do that, because when you say PTSD, people think I'm broken, there's no hope, whatever. But I guarantee there is hope and there's things that can be done to help.
Yeah, I noticed that. I actually noticed that on your website for Courageous Survival. And the other thing, the comment on that is it shifts it from a disorder where it's kind of like a problem that you have, right? Like ADHD or something, to look, if your arm's broken, that's an injury. That's not that's just the world. Like, my arm's broken. It's not a disorder. It's an actual injury, and it's not something that you should be ashamed of. In the same way that, if you have some type of disorder that people are, very hush-hush about it. And I thought that was a cool play on words.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for sharing everything you're doing. Thank you for doing everything you're doing. And we'll pop up the information for the Elevate on the screen for a bunch of people. They can see it. We'll put it in the description as well. And again, September 10th, which is a Saturday. This
September
coming
10th,
Saturday.
8 to 4.
Okay.
The tribute, the ceremony is at 10, so you want to get there early enough to get there to see it. But honestly, if you can't make it on the 10th, give us a call and we can get you down there. We can meet with you. We can get you some resource guides, stuff like that. And you can go to courageoussurvival.org to learn more about what we're doing, and our phone number's on there. Again, we're not a crisis resource. So call the new 988 number, which is the new federal number, if there's a mental health crisis. But otherwise, you can go ahead and give us a call or email us, contact us through Facebook if you want to learn more.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Cary. Thank you, Jacki. And man, thanks for everything you do.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us on. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Quick shout out to our sponsor, C Squared Social. C Squared Social is the leading expert in social media marketing and creative marketing. They have fantastic platforms. I have been a client of theirs for some time. I cannot recommend them highly enough. C Squared Social for all of your social media and creative marketing needs.